So there is Goliath standing on the field, issuing the challenge, and when he does so, he has something very specific in mind. The Philistines were not just cultured and civilized. They had also come to the point of realizing that bloody war in which tens of thousands of people died was a waste. They had come to the realization that if two champions could fight and decide the battle on that basis, then only one person had to die instead of tens of thousands. And Goliath had one man in mind when he stood on the field to challenge Israel. There was one guy that he wanted to fight, and that was Saul. And I'll tell you why he wanted to fight Saul. The Israelite soldiers, when they heard the challenge, went into the camp to find their king Saul. And there was Saul in his tent, ruling over his people, and the soldiers came and said to him, "Saul, the Philistines have sent out their champion, and they want you to fight him." And when Saul heard that, he broke into the greatest smile. They have sent out a champion, and he wants to fight me? And Saul thought to himself, "This is the day for which I was made. Finally, I will prove my strength before all my people, and they will know how great I am." And God said to Saul, "Saul, I am giving Goliath to you. You will defeat him." And Saul stood up. And when Saul begins to stand up, you realize why he has been made for this day. Saul stands up, and Saul, the king of Israel, was a giant. Chronicles states that Saul stood a full foot taller than any other man in all of Israel or Judah. God had made Saul a giant, 7 feet tall, 350 pounds of muscle, and he stands up like this and says, "This is the day for which I was made." Calls for his armor and his sword and his spear and his shield, and he dresses himself, and with his helmet on and the ostrich plume, he strides out of his tent, the tip of that feather towering over 8 feet above the ground, and he stomps out, and the soldiers of Israel back away like a wave like that. They have never seen anything so magnificent or so resplendent in their lives, and they cower with fear before the mighty giant Saul. And he says to his soldiers, "Where is this Goliath?" He walks through the soldiers, and he's saying to God, "Oh God, thank you for this day. I have been living for this." He walks through this massive giant. My goodness, if Saul were alive today, you could put him into the ring in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and he'd grab 2 of those 6-foot guys, and he'd bang their heads together and throw their lifeless bodies aside. And he broke through the crowd. And he stood looking across the field, and he saw Goliath. And the smile faded from Saul's face. He looked around at his fellow soldiers, and he said, one of the soldiers said to Saul, "He's not 9 feet tall." Saul said, "Yes, he is." And the soldier said, "No, he's not 9 feet tall. He's 9'6". Saul said to God, "Lord, you have betrayed me. You have let me down, oh God." And Saul threw down his sword and his shield, and he took off his armor, and he went back to his tent, and he sulked. Maybe he went down to the river and wept because God had let him down. And you know what happened. The little boy down by the river, little boy picking up stones. And maybe Saul said to him, "What are you doing?" And the little boy said, "I'm gathering stones from my slingshot." And Saul said, "Are you going hunting?" And the little boy said, "Yes." "What are you hunting, rabbits?" The little boy said, "No, I'm going to fight Goliath." Saul laughed at him. You know, the little boy picked up 5 stones that day. Did you ever wonder why David took 5 stones when he only needed 1 stone? Do you think it was because he thought he might miss? You know why David took 5 stones? It's because Goliath had 4 brothers. Ishinbab, Saph of Gath, another brother named Goliath, because the family was running out of names, and a 4th brother to Goliath, whose name is not given. It is only said that he was bigger than Goliath, and he had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, and he loved to fight. David assumed that after he had killed Goliath, the brothers would come out, so he better take 5 stones. So if you think it's marvelous that a little boy went to fight 1 giant, you remember he went out to fight 5 giants. And if they had come out that day, you know. And David killed Goliath. Killed him with a sling. Don't think for a moment that a sling was a child's toy, or that he was shooting pebbles at Goliath. He was shooting stones like this. David was shooting stones that were this big or a little bit bigger than a fastball. The armies of Israel had 700 slingers. They could sling a stone over 400 meters at over 100 kilometers per hour. It wasn't a toy. Doesn't matter. Killed Goliath. That's another story.